Hi guys, welcome back. This is another tip from my GSD lab. This tip. I wasn't planning on recording a video about the network manager for Rehat, but one of a couple of days ago, I was working with one of the students on one of the labs, and I asked him to configure his TCP/IP settings on the server using the text user interface for the network manager. And to my surprise, he actually came back and asked me if he could do it using the command line interface. I say to my surprise because typically the command line interface is a little bit more complicated. You have to remember a lot of properties, and surprisingly he knew his way around the command line interface. And I have to confess that I myself got comfortable using the text user interface rather than using the command line to configure the network manager on Rehat. But obviously, thinking back a little bit, I have to recognize the value of having the ability to use a command line interface as well. Not only because it's a very good tool when you're doing some scripting on your server, but also because it's a tool that you can actually do a lot of configuration very fast, and you can especially if you have already a certain configuration on your server. That's number one. Number two, there are all the a little bit more advanced configuration that you can actually do with NMCLI, and the NM2E, which is the text user interface, is not very efficient from my point of view. I mean, you might find somebody who can create, for example, a team or create a bridge using text user interface easily. I have had some problems trying to do it using the text user interface, and I prefer to do those configurations using the command line interface. So let me just do a quick introduction to the network manager text user interface, just to show you that it's it's a very comprehensive tool that you can it's very easy to use to configure your interfaces. Let me just show you here. You have three options, which is edit connection, activate a connection, and set the host name. Once you go in, you will see that it's very simple. You can actually just select the connection that you want to edit, and right here you have all the configuration that you can change. For example, the address, the gateway, the DNS server, and the information is here is a lot more in human form, I would say, right? You can understand what's what they're asking for, right? What's the IP address, what's the default gateway, and what are your DNS servers. But let me just get out of there and show you the way to do this using the command line interface instead, right? So first of all, I hope that we understand the difference between the IP command and the NMCLI command. I'm just gonna say summarize it quick. There's a lot of other differences, but the IP command, what it does, it will configure your running configuration on network manager, but the NMCLI command and the NM2E are going to do a persistent configuration on your interfaces. What that means is that the configuration that you do with an MCLI will survive a reboot, when the configuration that you do with IP won't survive a reboot. But the other fact is that whatever you configure using an M2 and MCLI, you have to deactivate and reactivate the interface for the changes to take effect. So let me just run IPA to look at the IP addresses that I have configured right now on my server, and I'm going to do some changes to this interface right here, which is ETH2. Right now I have an IP address here that I have that I received by DHCP, and I want to change that configuration to a manual configuration. So before starting our configuration, the first step is to to figure out the name of that connection. So to do that, we do NMCLI, then connection show, right? If we do NMCLI connection show, we don't specify a connection, what's going to do is going to show us a summary of all the network connections. And right here we have the name of the connection, and then on the right hand side we have the device name. So we're looking to configure ETH2 as we said earlier, and and the name of the connection is wire connection 2. So now let's take a look quick at the properties of that connection. To do that, we do an MCLI connection show wire connection 2. As you can see, there's a lot of properties that we can change, and you know, you can see it on the left hand side, the property name, and then on the right hand side the value. I want to focus this quick video on only on the IPv4 configuration, so let me just focus that command to only the IPv4 settings. To do that, we can actually grep this command. So we do grep IPv4, and I want to set an IP address manually, right? A default gateway, and then I want to set a DNS, a primary DNS and a secondary DNS. So to do that, we do an MCLI connection, then modify, right? And then we need to, you know, tell it what connection we're modifying, and then from here on we can start entering, you know, all these properties. So I'm gonna do them one at a time, just for you to see, you know, what how to do it. So IPv4 address, let me just enter an address. I am going to configure the server as 192.168.122.3/24. Then I want to configure a default gateway, so modify wire connection 2, same thing, IPv4, the same way that you see it here, right? Dot gateway, and then 192.168.2.1. So the server seems to be lagging a little bit. So let me go back here, gateway, and then 192.168.122.1, and then I'm going to add my primary DNS server, right? Modify, and then the same thing, wire 2 IPv4 DNS, and then 192.168.122.1. Now to add a secondary DNS server, what I'm going to do, if I enter the same command and I enter another DNS server, it's just going to override the primary. So to add a secondary, we do a plus, and then IPv4 DNS, and then let's try 8.8.8.8, right? Perfect. So far we have configured already an IP address, a gateway, and then a primary and secondary DNS. The next thing that we need to configure is the method, and sometimes we tend to forget the fact that we have to change the method from auto to manual. So if you leave it like this, the system will take the configuration, and what's going to happen is that you will actually use this IP address that you set manually plus this other property right here that you see, which is IP4 address, which is what you actually get from the HTTP server, and you will get some strange behavior. So in any case, if you are configuring your server for a manual IP address, you need to configure the method as well as manual. So let's just do that right now. And MCLI connection modify wire 2 IPv4 dot method, and then manual. Done. So let's just take a look at what we have so far. So connection show wire 2, and then I want to grab this to IPv4, and as you can see, we have the method already set to manual. We have a primary and a secondary DNS server, an IP address, and a default gateway. That configuration should be sufficient. I can certainly do, you know, the rest of the configuration here, but for the purpose of the video, these are not that interesting. So as I explained earlier, the fact that we enter this configuration doesn't mean that this configuration is active, right? So it means that it will be active the next time this interface comes back online. So if we do IP address, you will see that ETH2 still has the old IP address right there. So to bring that configuration back up, we will use an MCLI as well. We do an MCLI connection down, and then wire connection 2. If we do that right now, we will lose connection to the server, so we don't want to do that. I always like to bounce the interface, meaning I will shut it down and bring it back up in the same command. So we do column, and then we do an MCLI connection up, require 2. So at this point, since and by the way, I'm connected to the server by SSH, so I probably lost connection already. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring up another command prompt and reconnect to the server. So let me just do that right now. If you remember, the IP address is 192.168.122.3. Sorry, just enter the IP address wrong. 3. Enter the password and okay. So IP address, and we should see that ETH2 right now has the correct IP address. So look at the IP address right here. 192.168.122.3. So one thing, normally, you know, if you can see, none of the configuration that we have done so far configuration that you cannot do using the text user interface. But obviously, if now I want to you know, change the primary DNS, something like that, I can, you know, very easily do it on the fly with just one command and just bounce the interface, and we should be alright. But again, I wanted to just show you a way to find the properties that you can actually modify using the NMCLI. Just coming back a little bit, from my point of view, a good system administrator is not the one that remembers all the commands that you can run on Linux. A good system administrator is the one that can actually, that understands how the configuration goes and where to go for information. So I always like to show you know, some place where you can go for information. So in this case, NMCLI does have a man page for NMCLI, obviously, but I find that man page not to be very useful, and this is my opinion, guys. At the end of the day, it shows you, you know, the structure of the command, and you know, and how to, you know, it gives you a general information about the command. If you can come in here and you know, read the description and look at some of the options that you have, and that's fine. For me, the man page that I use the most is called an MCI examples, right? An MCLI examples actually is a page that includes, you know, multiple examples on how to use an MCLI to do certain configurations. And why do I want to show you this man page? Because let me just scroll down. My favorite on this man page is example, I believe it's number 6, 7, and 8, right? 6, 7, and 8. These are configurations that I haven't been able to do, you know, very well using the text user interface. Maybe, you know, some people can find, you know how to do it, and I know that there's some information on the Rehat side on how to use the text user interface to do this configuration, but I find it, you know, faster. That I can take this example and do the configuration a lot faster. Example number 6 is how to create a bond between two interfaces. This configuration is typically, I think it's depreciated. I mean, it's still available on Linux, but you know, system administrators don't use it that much. I personally prefer teaming two interfaces, and this is how you do a team between the two interfaces. So basically, you create your team, and you assign a configuration to that team. You know, depending on how, you know, what you want that team to do, if you want to load balance and to be active, passive, or whatnot, and then you assign slaves to that team. So you create interfaces and you add them to that team, and you know, you bring your slaves up, and then you have a working team interface, right? The next thing is the next configuration I wanted to show you here is the bridge configuration. Right, so you can create, you know, a bridge and assign a couple of slaves to your bridge and whatnot, and you can configure, you know, how if the bridge you have a spanning tree or not. So this is just an example of what you can do. Example number 9, I think we went through some of these configurations already. This is what we just did. So, you know, all in all, I think this is a very useful man page, and it's worth your time, you know, going in and checking it out and see, you know, everything you can do with NMCLI. I'm pretty sure you're gonna, you know, start liking that that tool. So I hope you find it useful, and thank you for watching.